So imagine breaking into this highly secure vault, right? And you manage to steal the classified architectural blueprints for some massive 100-story skyscraper in Dubai.
Okay, I am with you so far.
Right. So you take those blueprints and then you compare those exact schematics to the microscopic genetic DNA sequence of a redwood tree in California.
Two very fundamentally different things.
Exactly. Completely different domains. But you line them up side by side and you realize they are line for line perfectly identical, which is, mathematically impossible
Right,
now.
absolutely impossible under normal circumstances, yeah.
But as we are going to explore today, physicists and mathematicians are actually finding exactly this kind of identical underlying blueprint hiding everywhere. I mean, inside the crushing gravity of black holes, the infinite spacing of prime numbers, and even the neurons currently firing inside your own brain.
It is wild.
It really is. So, welcome to a deep dive that is honestly going to fundamentally rewire how you see existence. Today, we are unpacking this genuinely mind-bending dissertation. It's called Bereshith HaDavar, Information Ontology and the Perennial Structure of Reality.
And it is just a staggering piece of scholarship. I mean, what we're looking at here is an attempt at a grand unification.
Right, like the holy grail of physics.
Yeah, exactly, uniting quantum mechanics and general relativity. But it's not just trying to do that. It is attempting to unify ancient Hebrew theology, advanced algebraic topology, and, believe it or not, human consciousness, all under a single mathematical framework.
Which is a huge undertaking. So the core mission of our deep dive today is to sort of shortcut your journey through this incredibly dense material. We're setting out to answer one of the oldest, I guess, most agonizing questions in human history. Like, what is reality actually made of?
Right, the ultimate question.
Because for centuries, Western philosophy has pretty much trapped us in this dilemma where we rely on the concept of substance. You knock on a wooden table, your knuckles throb, so you just assume the world is made of solid stuff.
Yeah, the basic sensory assumption.
And if you zoom in close enough, the assumption is that that stuff is just made of smaller microscopic stuff, atoms, protons, quarks.
But the problem physicists hit with that approach is the infinite regress. It's that classic turtles all the way down scenario.
Right, you never hit a bottom layer.
Exactly, you don't. When you actually observe quantum fields, you don't find tiny solid billiard balls bouncing off each other. That's a myth. You find mathematical probabilities, you find fields of potential and these boundary conditions. So if you look closely enough at the quote-unquote stuff, the solidity just completely evaporates.
So there is no foundational physical brick to the universe.
Nope. And the alternative that philosophers usually offer to substance is what's called process philosophy.
Oh, right, where everything's just constantly changing.
Yeah, the idea that there is no fundamental thing at all. Everything is just pure flux, pure change, like a river that's constantly flowing.
But the author points out a big issue with that, right?
A massive issue. That framework risks complete arbitrary chaos. If reality is pure, unanchored change, how does definite, stable form ever arise at all? Why does a hydrogen atom consistently behave like a hydrogen atom every single time?
It needs rules.
Right. And this dissertation proposes a really radical third way called information ontology. It argues that reality is not built on physical matter, nor is it this chaotic flux. Reality is built entirely on generative mathematical structures.
Meaning structure is the fundamental bedrock, not stuff.
Exactly. Structure is the bottom turtle.
Okay. But to understand how a structure can exist without being made of, like physical material, we actually have to step away from the Greek philosophers who gave us the whole concept of atoms.
I do.
We have to look at an ancient Hebrew concept that the author argues perfectly captures this exact third way. And it's a word you might have heard before if you study this stuff, the Davar.
Yeah, the Davar. And the linguistic polyphony of that specific word is what anchors this entire theory.
Unpack that word for us because it's not just a simple noun.
Far from it.
Huh.
In ancient Hebrew, Davar holds multiple simultaneous meanings that all sort of resonate together. It translates to word, in the sense of an utterance or a command, but it simultaneously translates to thing, as in a concrete, physical object.
Which is already a trip.
Right. And it translates to event, an action taking place in time. And on top of all that, it translates to matter, meaning an affair or a concern.
So just to clarify for everyone, it isn't a sequence. It's not like a word is spoken, which then describes a thing, which then triggers an event.
No, not at all. The Davar is all of those states simultaneously. It is a generative structure. The utterance actually is the object, which is the event of its own becoming.
That is wild.
It completely collapses the distance between the blueprint and the building. The word creates the thing through the action of the event.
Okay, so think about it like this. Think about a line of computer code on your laptop right now. In the physical world, a blueprint is just a static drawing of a house, right? The paper doesn't magically build the walls.
But you need a construction crew.
Exactly. But a line of code doesn't just passively describe a software program. When that code is executed, it actively is the program running. The command and the action are the exact same mechanism.
That is a perfect analogy. Yes.
But I have to push back on the author's premise here a bit. I mean, I love the poetry of the Davar. It's beautiful. But a linguistic, theological concept is not a quirk. Like, how does a philosophical metaphor actually survive rigorous peer review in modern physics?
Well, by translating it into pure topology. To formalize the Davar, the dissertation relies heavily on the cutting-edge mathematics of a French researcher named Pierre Baudot.
Okay.
Specifically, he works in a field called information cohomology.
Okay, information cohomology. Let's break that down, because I know that sounds incredibly intimidating to anyone who didn't major in advanced math.
It does sound scary, but let's use the Genesis creation narrative as our map here, which the author actually does to show how the theology and the math perfectly align.
I love this part.
So before creation, the biblical text describes the universe as tohu vavohu. That's usually translated as the formless void.
Right, total emptiness.
Now, in Baudot's mathematics, this state maps exactly to what's called a probability complex. This is a mathematical space of pure potential. It has absolute maximum entropy, meaning there is absolutely no distinguishable structure whatsoever.
It's just static.
Yeah, it is the void awaiting a constraint. And then we get the famous moment, Yehi or,
Yeah.
let there be light.
But to be clear, because people get tripped up here, the author isn't talking about literal photons of light turning on in the dark.
No, no, no. In information cohomology, let there be light represents the emergence of the very first cohomology class.
Okay, define a cohomology class for us.
But understand that, you have to think about topology. Topology studies the properties of a geometric object that are preserved even when you stretch, twist, or bend that object.
Like the classic coffee mug and donut example.
Exactly. To a topologist, a coffee mug and a donut are the exact same shape because they both have exactly one hole in them. You can morph the dough of one into the shape of the other without tearing the material.
Because the whole stays the same.
Right. That whole, that stable, unchanging feature is a structural invariant. A cohomology class is exactly that. It's the mathematical emergence of a stable, distinct structural invariant. It is the exact moment distinguishability emerges from the formless void.
Wait, I need to pause you on the actual mechanics of entropy here.
Sure.
Because the dissertation states that in this mathematical framework, entropy is the first class of cohomology. But usually when we hear the word entropy, we just think of chaos.
Yeah, disorder.
Right? We think of a messy bedroom or like a hot cup of coffee cooling down and losing its thermal order. How can entropy be the very first step of creation?
Because it's less like a messy room and more like defining the exact dimensions of a blank canvas.
Oh, interesting.
Until you know how big the canvas is, its total possibility space, which is its entropy, you can't start painting structure onto it. In information theory, entropy is fundamentally a measure of uncertainty or potential.
So it's not chaos, it's capacity.
Precisely. By establishing a measure of the system's possibility space, you have laid down the initial boundary condition. You have taken the very first mathematical step out of pure, unbounded void. It's the foundational rule that allows higher order complexity to start differentiating and basically building reality.
What the math calls co-boundary.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so if reality is truly just this underlying mathematical structure taking different forms, if the Davar is orchestrating everything, we shouldn't just see it in abstract topology. We should see identical structures popping up in completely unrelated, totally disparate fields of science. The blueprints should match, like in my intro.
And we do see it.
Yeah.
And honestly, it historically terrifies scientists when it happens. The dissertation points to several, quote-unquote, mathematical miracles as proof of this cohesive underlying Davar. The most famous example, of course, is the 1972 Dyson-Montgomery miracle.
Man, this is one of my favorite stories in the history of science.
It's so good.
So you have this mathematician, Hugh Montgomery, at the Institute for Advanced Study, and he was studying pure number theory.
Pure math.
Right. Specifically, he was trying to map the distances between the zeros of the Riemann zeta function. And for those listening who aren't huge math nerds, the Riemann zeta function is intimately connected to the distribution of prime numbers.
Which are notoriously unpredictable.
Very. Prime numbers look like they just appear randomly on a number line, but mathematicians have always suspected there is a hidden rhythm to them. So Montgomery was writing these abstract equations to try to find that rhythm. And he casually mentions his equation to a physicist named Freeman Dyson over afternoon tea.
Just a casual chat over tea.
Right. And Dyson immediately recognizes the math.
He recognized it because Montgomery's equation for abstract prime numbers was completely identical to the Gaussian unitary ensemble, or the GUE.
And what does Dyson use the GUE for?
Dyson used the GUE in quantum physics. It is a complex statistical distribution formula used to map the energy levels of heavy atom nuclei, like uranium-238.
But hold on, prime numbers are just an abstract human invention used for counting. Heavy atomic nuclei are physical, radioactive rocks vibrating inside a nuclear reactor.
Are you saying they just happen to look statistically similar, or is this dissertation arguing something far more radical?
Oh, the dissertation argues this is absolutely not a coincidence. It argues they share the exact same underlying cohomology class.
Meaning the structure itself is identical.
Yes. The identical topological structure is appearing in two completely different physical and mathematical domains, and the text pushes this even further with the monstrous moonshine conjecture.
Which sounds like a 1920s jazz band, to be honest. It really does.
Yeah.
But it is actually a monstrously complex mathematical proof. And it connects two areas of math that really have no business talking to each other.
Like what?
So on one side, you have the monster group. This is a finite group of symmetries in abstract algebra. It is unimaginably massive. I mean, it has roughly 10 to the power of 53 elements.
Wow.
But it is finite, and it is strictly algebraic. On the other side, you have string theory, which deals with infinite dimensions and the fundamental vibrating strings that supposedly make up the universe.
So finite algebra versus infinite dimensional physics.
Exactly. And mathematicians discovered that the exact mathematical constraints governing the finite symmetries of the monster group are identical to the constraints governing the vibrational modes of infinite strings.
I just need to let that sink in for a second. The mathematical blueprint dictating the ultimate finite shape and the blueprint dictating the infinite building blocks of gravity are exactly the same.
They match perfectly.
It's not just that the blueprint is like the tree. It's the exact same math generating both the skyscraper and the tree.
The Davar is orchestrating reality across all registers. It's the same structure all the way down.
Which brings us to kind of a terrifying threshold.
Uh-oh.
Well, if this blueprint dictates everything from prime numbers to atomic nuclei, what happens when you throw the blueprint into an incinerator? Like, what happens when physical substance completely breaks down? We have to talk about black holes.
Ah, yes. The ultimate stress test for the universe.
Exactly.
So at the center of a black hole, at the singularity, physical substance and the rules of general relativity fail entirely. Density becomes infinite, volume goes to basically zero, matter as we know it is completely crushed out of existence.
The stuff is destroyed.
But here is the critical mechanical insight from the dissertation. The mathematical constraints survive.
You mean the mass, the charge, the angular momentum?
Yes, those properties. They are what we call cohomological invariants. They are conserved. The quote-unquote stuff is gone, the physical matter is completely annihilated, but the structure persists in the void. And this ties directly into what physicists call the holographic principle, specifically the ADS-CFT correspondence.
Okay, mechanically, how does a hologram work in deep space? Like, what does that mean?
Think about a security hologram on a credit card. It is a completely flat, two-dimensional surface,
Right.
But it contains all the necessary information to project a three-dimensional image to your eye.
Right.
The holographic principle suggests that all the information contained within a 3D volume of space, like the interior of a black hole, is actually encoded entirely on its 2D boundary, the event horizon.
So the outside surface holds the data for the inside.
Exactly. The interior reality is mathematically generated by the bits of information scaled to the Planck area on that surface. The boundary conditions mathematically dictate absolutely everything inside.
And the dissertation actually maps this physics concept to the ancient Hebrew concept of the Shem.
It does, yeah. The Shem translates to the name. In this topological framework, the name is a boundary condition without substance that basically generates the interior reality.
It isn't just a sticky label you put on a jar.
No, it is the essence. It's the structure that generates the contents of the jar. The Shem is the event horizon encoding the universe.
This completely reframes how we view cosmic destruction. I mean, usually pop culture treats a black hole like a cosmic garbage disposal that just shreds and destroys reality forever.
Right, the ultimate eraser.
But in an information ontology, a black hole is actually more like an arc. The physical vessels of matter might break under the extreme gravity, but the mathematical information, the structure of the Davar, is perfectly safely preserved on the horizon. The math survives the apocalypse.
The structure is maintained entirely without the substance. It is just an incredible mechanism of cosmic preservation.
So, if the universe goes to such extreme lengths to preserve information at the edge of a black hole, what does it do with the most dense, complex information structure we know of?
You're talking about the brain.
I'm talking about the human brain. We have to move from the cosmos to the mind now. How do you and I fit into a web of pure mathematical structure?
This really raises the ultimate question of this deep dive. What is consciousness in a universe made of pure information?
Right.
The text introduces the concept of Adam ha-Davar, that is, humanity as the structure knowing itself. In Baudot's mathematics, consciousness is defined mechanically as integrated information cohomology.
Okay, how does math wake up?
Remember those cohomology classes we talked about? Those stable topological holes like with the coffee mug and the donut?
Yeah, the invariance.
Imagine a highly complex network of information, like the billions of neurons in the human brain. When that network achieves a state where it can continuously measure and reflect upon its own cohomology classes, it creates a self-referential loop.
Like a mirror facing a mirror.
Or think of a video camera pointed directly at its own monitor. That infinite feedback loop of information measuring itself actually is the mechanical basis of subjectivity.
Oh, wow. Which attacks what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. It does.
Because the heart problem asks why it feels like anything to be alive. Like, why aren't we just unfeeling meat robots processing data in the dark?
Right.
And this text is arguing that subjectivity isn't some magical extra ghost substance sprinkled on top of matter. It is simply what it feels like when the universe's mathematical code computes itself. It is the math feeling its own geometry.
It is the Davar become flesh.
That's incredible.
And what is brilliant about this dissertation is that it doesn't just stop at neuroscience. The author takes this mathematical framework directly into human ethics, tying it to a concept from Lurianic Kabbalah called tikkun olam.
Which translates to the repair or the healing of the world.
Exactly. So the Kabbalistic myth describes the Shavirat HaKalim, the breaking of the vessels. The mythology states that the divine light of creation was too intense, the vessels meant to hold it shattered, and the universe fragmented into chaotic shards.
Okay, so how does that map to the math? In information ontology, this represents a literal phase transition. When mathematical constraints become too rigid, entropy increases exponentially, and the cohomological structure fragments. Information appears lost, broken, or disconnected.
So the blueprint essentially gets shredded.
Yes. And tikkun olam ethical human action is argued to be the literal mechanical process of repair.
Wait, really?
Yeah. When humans act with compassion, when we seek justice, when we pursue deep learning, the dissertation argues we are not just following arbitrary social rules to keep civilization polite, we are actually engaging in path integration within the information complex.
Mind blown.
We are mathematically navigating the system toward higher integration, rebuilding the broken cohomology, and restoring the cosmic structure.
There is a staggering beauty to that argument. I mean, ethics is not a human invention, then. In this ontology, being a good person is literally a law of physics.
It is.
Compassion is just the recognition of the Davar, the exact same underlying structure in another person. Justice is the equitable distribution of mathematical constraints. Ethical action is the universe using you as the mechanism to heal its own mathematical code.
It transforms morality from a subjective philosophical debate into a fundamental topological imperative.
We've covered a massive, just mind-bending amount of ground today. We started with the Davar, this ancient idea of a word that is simultaneously a thing and an actively occurring event.
Yep.
We explored how Pierre Baudot's information cohomology turns that theology into rigorous topological math, where a blank canvas of entropy gives birth to structural invariant holes.
The cohomology classes.
Right. We saw that exact same mathematical structure miraculously orchestrating both abstract prime numbers and nuclear radiation. We survived the extreme gravity of a black hole to find the blueprint preserved on a 2D holographic horizon. And finally, we saw how human consciousness is that very structure waking up, tasked with repairing the broken code of reality through the physics of ethical action.
And there's one final, really elegant piece from the text that ties this entire chronological journey together.
What's that?
The Sabbath.
Oh, the seventh day of the Genesis creation narrative.
Yeah. In our modern, hyper-productive world, we tend to view a Sabbath merely as a break from work.
Yeah.
A pause to catch our breath before returning to the grind.
Just a day off.
But in information ontology, the seventh day isn't a cessation of effort. It is what the author calls the eschatology of information ontology. It is the ultimate goal.
But how does rest function mathematically? Like, what does that look like?
The Sabbath represents the moment the mathematical complex is fully generated and perfectly integrated. All the constraints are perfectly satisfied. The system becomes entirely self-sustaining.
Wow.
The Davar rests in its own completed structure. It is a state of perfect dynamic rest, where the topological structure persists without needing any further co-boundary operations, without needing to change, act, or correct itself.
Huh.
It is reality fully articulated, and through tikkun olam, fully repaired.
A perfectly self-sustaining equation of existence. I mean, this deep dive fundamentally changes how you look at everything, from the wood of your dining table to the photographs of distant black holes.
It really reframes everything.
It does. But as you process all of this today, consider one final thought. If this dissertation is right, if consciousness is literally the universe's underlying mathematical structure waking up to reflect on itself, what does that mean about the words you choose to speak today? In a universe built entirely on the Davar, where the word, the physical thing, and the event are the exact same generative mechanism, are your words just passively describing the world around you, or are you actually mathematically speaking reality into existence?